Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Gray, and I'm a psychological and relationship astrologer, as well as a psychotherapist. Today, I'd like to welcome you to this very brief talk on the lunar eclipse, which is happening in a couple of days on March 25th. Next week, if you'd like to join me, I'm going to look at April, the month ahead, because there's a lot of planetary events, from Mercury retrograde to the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, the solar eclipse. So please bear with me. We're going to talk about that next week and the week after. But today, let's focus on the lunar eclipse. And now I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about that. So indeed, the eclipses are coming, and it's very helpful to really have a little bit of an understanding of what eclipses are about, lunar eclipses in particular about, and particularly in the sign it's in. So let's start with considering how the phases of the moon pull and push the tides on our planet. It's not surprising that they impact our feelings and moods so much. And we can really imagine a lunar eclipse as a giant amplified full moon with the effects lasting for months rather than days. It just has a sense about it that is so much stronger and pulls our emotions in. So let's explore this specific lunar eclipse a little bit more. First of all, it's a penumbral lunar eclipse, which means that it's not totally covered up. And also to mention that eclipse season happens twice a year. This is the first season of 2024. The next season will be in the autumn. Eclipses are so interesting because they take us right back to the origins of astrology. When people started looking at the skies and the planets and the moon, noticing that the obscuring of the moon or the sun coincided with events on the planet. In those days, they were really looking at weather changes because those affected the crops and therefore their food, and also other global events like wars and changes in populations. As a psychological astrologer, I'm much more interested on their impact on our psyche. Now, keep in mind that lunar eclipses can only happen at the time of a full moon, which means that the sun opposes the moon, and they're just a bigger, more amplified full moon. So a lunar eclipse is caused by the Earth blocking sunlight from reaching the moon. Remember that the moon has no light of its own. It relies entirely on the light of the sun. And so if this light doesn't get through, then there's a shadow, which means that although our emotions are heightened underneath the surface and our unconscious is coming up, it's actually not very visible. So we know something is happening, but it's hard to pinpoint what's going on. And as humans, we kind of like to know what's going on. Keep in mind that because a full moon is always in opposition between the sun and the moon, there's a requirement for integration of the two energies. And the temptation often with oppositions is to project one side or the other of the opposition, the side that we struggle to relate to, which depends what's going on in your own chart. What are you less uncomfortable with? And it's very easy to project this onto the people in our lives or situations in our lives. So the Libra Aries axis, here we have the moon in Libra, the sun in Aries. This is all about self and others. It's about individuation and interdependence, individualism and compromise. It's also about courage versus balance. How can we lead, think Aries, whilst also considering the needs of others? So notice for you and for your chart, which side is easier for you, independence or interdependence? So let's think of some of the qualities of Aries at its best: leadership, courage, innovation, fairness, honesty, directness, freedom. It's the warrior. It's a little more uncouth than Libra. Think that Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the child of the zodiac. In the tarot, it's the fool that jumps off the cliff. Then we've got Libra opposing it, which is all about balance, wanting to please others. It's very civilized, it's polished, it's refined. It's the energy of the mediator, wanting to be liked and wanting to relate with others. Keep in mind that with the North Node currently in Aries, we are being nudged globally, collectively, to own these Aries qualities, ideally the best of them, because Aries, when it's not at its best, it goes into that very primal fighter mode. And it's like it's literally the ram that kind of rams its head into the wall just for the sake of it. So it's that uncouth, very primal, wanting to do battle, reacting rather than responding. Let's look at some of these qualities. So we talked about the amplification, heightens emotional reactions, easy to project. Keep those things in mind. And what we're aiming to do is to integrate both sides, respond rather than react, keep grounded. And with full moons and with lunar eclipses, it's a time to let go. And mentioning letting go, notice also that the moon aspects Pluto here. And it's a trine to Pluto. It's Pluto in Aquarius. We are just beginning to get a taster of what this feels like, this Pluto in Aquarius, which is all about rebellion in the collective, particularly in areas where there's a lack of equality. Keep in mind, though, Aquarius is a fixed sign, so it's not an easy shift over. It's not necessarily just here we are, we're all going to wake up. Ideally, we will, but there may be some battle with Pluto. It's got to first dig things up. So because this eclipse aspects Pluto, we know that there's some fundamental transformation that is happening deep within us, particularly in the areas of our relationships. So keep that in mind, and keep in mind always with these planetary aspects, keep yourself grounded. Very, very important. I know I keep saying this in my blogs, but it's really such a helpful starting point. If we're anchored in ourselves, by grounded, I mean anchored in ourself, anchored in our body, anchored in the earth. And letting go just means letting be. So where can you see this eclipse? Europe, much of Asia, much of Australia, much of Africa, North America, South America, Pacific, Atlantic, Arctic, and Antarctica. However, remember that it's a penumbral eclipse, so you won't see the full effect. If you're interested in psychological and relationship astrology, please join me back, subscribe on this channel, and please follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And thank you so much for joining me today. Really, really appreciate it. And I hope to see you again very soon. Have a wonderful day. And